Alright, since it's been a whopping 6 videos since I last discussed a mystery, I figure I'm overdue, or at least at risk of losing my gimmick. So here we are. You, me, Jody Foster, and the unrelenting darkness of the Alaskan winter. Sounds like a dream blunt rotation, right? Anyway, True Detective, or its original season at least, is widely regarded as one of the greatest seasons of television ever conceived. But we're not talking about the original season, are we? We're talking about the new season, Night Country. So let's do it. But before we do it, maybe I can give you something to keep you hooked. Because after all, why listen to my review of Night Country when there's probably countless other videos out there discussing the pilot already? Because, here's the twist, I have never in my life seen a single second of any other True Detective season, so I'm going in completely blind. That should offer a pretty unique perspective, right? Right. Though I must admit, not completely blind. I did see some media publications referencing the interview with Jody Foster that was coming in ahead of the Night Country premiere, and they essentially just kept pulling the same quote about her not caring for Gen Z and their workplace behaviors. This struck my curiosity, so I did something absolutely freakish. That's right, I read the article. All of it. The entire thing. And believe it or not, that quote was cherry-picked out of context in order to garner clicks and reaction on social media. Who'd have thought, right? Out of character. Entirely out of character. Anyway, the real interview was actually really fascinating. Jodie Foster discusses her time coming up through Hollywood, which is essentially her entire conscious life. She talks about what it was like being one of the first, and seemingly only, openly LGBTQ+ actresses in the industry, and how her entire life at times was forcefully framed around this one part of her identity. She makes some really compelling insights about how warped the perspectives of celebrities necessarily becomes, and how she had to learn to adjust to this warped perspective and fight actively against it. She talks about trying to be a mentor and a friend to upcoming out artists of the modern era, and how much things have changed since the time when she had to be the one left out to dry, for all intents and purposes, alone and isolated with her identity. It's a great read, and I found myself happy to have spent time engaging with it. But on to Night Country, which, similar to a significant portion of Jodie Foster's career due to the stigmas of her time, deals in isolation and solitude. It deals with that inherent unease and unusualness that seems to come with the territory of the parts of the world tries to separate itself from. Of course, I don't mean to equate her own personal struggles to elements of a television show, but I did need a segue. So apologies, but we had to get to our destination somehow. So let's dive into the True Detective Virgin's thoughts on the pilot of Season 4, Night Country. Spoilers from here on out, though there isn't really too much to spoil yet. Mainly this episode was concerned with getting the viewers hooked, getting us to take the bait that this season was offering, biting down on that small morsel so that we could be reeled in. Sucked up along the current of the narrative the season intends to weave for us. Apologies for the fishing metaphors, I've recently read the book The Fisherman. Very good, would recommend. Anyways, it's a narrative that promises to provide questions, and more questions, until finally opening all the boxes and unwinding all the threads to show us the answers that were sitting in front of us the entire time. We just weren't looking at them from the right perspective. So, how does Night Country make this promise, in my opinion? How does it present opportunities for the audience to sink into the cushion of its couch, immersing itself in the mystery that is central to its season? For one, unease. There's too many elements of the eerie and unusual to count, but I'll do my best to name a few. There's the opening caribou, watched by the hunter. They're spooked and scattered by some unseen, presently unknowable force. They break off, fleeing with a fear that seems completely foreign to this hunter, this man who has likely contended with these caribou all his life. That immediately raises some questions. Some questions we no doubt want answered. And that's just the opening scene. On top of all of this, we have the local legends, the spirits of lovers gone to visit their widowed spouses. We have stories passed down to grandkids that put sinister figures into their minds, figures that could very well be at play in our central crime here. We have scarred polar bears appearing seemingly out of thin air. We have an entire facility of scientists gone up in smoke, the only signs of their presence being some electronics that seem to flicker and trip like they're trying to warn the police and the troopers of something sinister. We have a long unsolved, still open murder that seems to have threads connecting it to these disappearances, each connection reinforcing the idea that the previous one posited. This isn't a coincidence. Nothing is. Nothing in this episode can be taken as anything less than intentional. It can't be seen as anything other than a detail worth holding on to, or at least trying as best you can to remember it. Night Country also presents us with a connective web of relationships and events in history that intertwines seemingly everything we experience in the first episode. There's the town of Ennis's history, there's the local legends of the indigenous people, which seem to suggest something sinister and mystic about this place's isolation in the northern limits of the world. There's the mines and how they seem to be a black mark in the past of most every character who's presented to us. It's a feudal, warring period in Ennis's history that seems to leave a wake of regret and sorrow in everyone who's seems forced to bring it up. These mines, somehow connected to the murders, can maybe inform us of the terrible fate of Annie K. What is there to learn about them? What may be their link to this research facility where these men vanished from? Though it seems obvious to the viewer that there should be some kind of link, some sort of answer hidden within the prompting question of these minds, everyone seems eager to avoid it, afraid that they might see this connection. And this only serves to pull the viewer in further somehow, with its nothingness now promising even more substance down the line, and leading us toward these answers, bouncing us toward the conclusions of the mystery right alongside Danvers and Navarro are the characters, the townsfolk, all of which Danvers and Navarro seem to have some connection with. The reluctant underling of Danvers who seems to sabotage the entire precinct, there's the town drunk who can't keep out of her own way, there's the eager younger Officer Pryor, and they're all just part of this complex web of relationships. Each one of them is seemingly as fleshed out as the leading role of most other shows. They're complicated, they're nuanced, each of them have a central driving force that steers them on their larger path, but they also have more immediate and present desires that could push them off course for a scene or two. With characters so familiar with one another and so intricately developed, the possibilities only grow. The potential answers to our central mystery may only become more significant, more weighty in what they mean for these townsfolk. And to untangle this eerie and perhaps supernatural intertwined thread of disappearance are our leads, Danvers and Navarro. Our leads who are up to the task. They're able to discern these details that their peers and the audience likely wouldn't have even thought to think. Washed laundry that's gone stale, condiments whose emulsions have broken, missing buttons on sleeves of a particular parka. Our leads are driven and compelled to solve this case and find answers, but also held back, dragged down by the ghosts of their past that still linger. Yes, they drive them to act and in ways shape the core of who they are and how they keep going, but they also keep their edges rough. They keep their relationships brittle and rocky, keep them unwilling to smooth out scars that maybe haven't quite healed yet. There's a friend lost in another life, an incident leaving a burden you at times don't wish to carry. All of this drives them. It drives us and feeds us, and it makes us want to learn more about these people. Not these characters, but these people. These people in their lives that are already challenging and complicated enough, thrust into a seemingly impossible situation. Forced to answer a question that seems to have its answers just as much in the world beyond ours as it does in their town of Ennis. So, with all that said, I guess you can say the first episode did its job. It gave the promise of the premise, and that promise was good enough, interesting enough, intriguing enough to make me not just want, but need to come back for more. I need to know what happens. The puzzle needs to be solved. This town and its mysteries, both earthly and otherwise, need explanation. These characters need exploration. And if the pilot episode is anything to go by, I'm sure that all will be done. I'd give Night Country 4 to 5 stars, and am fascinated and ready to see what sorts of dark corners and unending nights it brings to us next. Until next time.